If you grew up in the 1980s or 90s, Saturday mornings meant one thing. You were planted in front of the TV at 7 a.m. sharp, bowl of sugary cereal in hand. 4 straight hours of pure cartoon magic. For millions of American kids, this wasn't just entertainment. It was ritual, a shared cultural experience that defined childhood itself. But here's the heartbreaking part. If you've got kids today, they'll never know what we had. Saturday morning cartoons are gone, completely dead. Most people blame streaming services or the internet, but the truth is much more complicated and honestly a lot more tragic, because what really destroyed Saturday morning cartoons wasn't technology. It was a perfect storm of government regulation, corporate greed, and shifting family life, all colliding to dismantle one of childhood's greatest joys. So let's rewind to see how Saturday morning cartoons were born and how they died. It all started in 1966. CBS tried running reruns of the Flintstones on Saturday mornings, and the ratings? Through the roof. Networks quickly realized they'd struck gold. Kids were a captive audience. Parents were sleeping in, school was out, and children had nothing else to do. The perfect storm for advertisers. By the 1970s, all 3 major networks had 4-hour Saturday morning cartoon blocks. We're talking Scooby-Doo, The Smurfs, Looney Tunes, dozens more. Each network spending millions to pump out original content just for kids. And here's what made it magic. It was appointment television. If you missed it, you missed it. Period. Every kid in America was watching the same shows at the same time. I remember setting my alarm for 6:45 a.m., not for school, but for cartoons. I'd sneak downstairs, pour myself a big bowl of Fruity Pebbles, and claim my spot on the carpet, right in front of our wood-grain Zenith TV. The anticipation was incredible. By the 1980s, Saturday morning cartoons were generating over $100 million in ad revenue every year. Shows like The Smurfs were pulling in 20 million viewers every single Saturday. To put that in perspective, that's more than most primetime shows get today. But even at the height of their popularity, the forces that would eventually kill Saturday morning cartoons were already forming. The beginning of the end started in 1990 with something called the Children's Television Act. On the surface, it sounded like a good thing. Broadcasters were now required to provide educational programming for kids. But here's where it gets tricky. The FCC ruled that traditional Saturday morning cartoons, the fun ones we actually wanted to watch, didn't count as educational. To meet the new rules, shows had to clearly teach math, science, social studies, or life lessons. Suddenly, networks couldn't just air Scooby-Doo and call it a day. They needed programming with actual learning objectives. The problem? Educational cartoons were expensive to produce, and most kids found them boring. This is when we started seeing more airtime for shows like Schoolhouse Rock, which was great, but it also meant less room for pure entertainment, and the magic of Saturday mornings was already starting to fade. Then in 1996, the FCC tightened the screws even more. They required 3 full hours of educational programming every week, and it had to air during times when kids were actually watching, which meant Saturday mornings. Networks now faced a choice: spend millions creating educational content that kids might not even watch, or find cheaper alternatives. Guess which one they chose? While the government was regulating Saturday morning cartoons to death, cable television was offering something the broadcast networks could never compete with: cartoons, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Cartoon Network launched in 1992, and suddenly kids could watch cartoons anytime they wanted. Why wait until Saturday morning for Scooby-Doo when you could watch it Tuesday afternoon, or Wednesday night, or even Thursday morning before school? Nickelodeon had already been doing something similar since the mid-80s, but by the 90s, they were in full competition with the networks, and they were winning. But here's what really killed Saturday morning cartoons: corporate consolidation. In the late 90s and early 2000s, the major networks started getting bought up by larger media conglomerates, companies who cared more about profit margins than childhood traditions. Disney bought ABC in 1995. Viacom owned CBS and Nickelodeon. Time Warner controlled Cartoon Network. And suddenly, they all realized something. They could make far more money by moving cartoon content to their cable channels, where they could charge cable companies for the privilege of carrying them. Why give cartoons away for free on broadcast television when you could sell them on cable? It was a no-brainer from a business perspective. But for us, the kids at home, it was devastating for the Saturday morning tradition. By the year 2000, the writing was on the wall. CBS replaced their Saturday morning cartoons with a news program called The Saturday Early Show. ABC shifted more toward educational content. NBC dropped cartoons altogether, airing teen-oriented live-action shows instead. And the final nail in the coffin came in 2014, when the CW, the last network still airing cartoons on Saturday morning, ended their Vortex block. After nearly 50 years, Saturday morning cartoons were officially dead on broadcast television. But there's another factor that killed Saturday morning cartoons, and nobody really talks about it. American families themselves changed. Back in the 1980s, most families had just one TV in the living room. Kids didn't have their own televisions, computers, or game consoles in their bedrooms. If you wanted entertainment, you watched what was on the family TV. Saturday morning cartoons worked perfectly for this. They gave parents a few hours to sleep in, while kids were safely entertained in the living room. It was a win-win situation. But by the 2000s, everything was different. Kids had TVs in their rooms. They had gaming systems, computers, and eventually smartphones and tablets. They didn't need to wait for Saturday morning anymore. They could be entertained anytime, anywhere. Parents' schedules changed too. Youth sports moved to Saturday mornings. Families became busier, more scheduled, more rushed. That lazy Saturday morning tradition became a thing of the past. And here's something heartbreaking. Kids today don't even understand the concept of appointment television. They've never had to wait all week for their favorite show. They've never felt that anticipation of Saturday morning, the shared cultural moment when millions of kids across the country were all watching the same thing at the same time. The communal experience of Saturday morning cartoons, the one where you talk about what you watched with your friends at school on Monday, that's gone forever. So what exactly did we lose when Saturday morning cartoons disappeared? More than you might think. We lost a shared cultural touchstone. Every kid who grew up in the 70s, 80s, and 90s remembers the same Saturday mornings. The excitement of waking up early, the ritual of cereal and cartoons, the disappointment when the block ended, and boring grown-up shows came on instead. We lost the art of anticipation. Kids today get instant gratification. They want to watch something, and they watch it immediately. But back then, there was something magical about waiting all week for Saturday morning, about that building excitement that made it feel special. We lost quality original programming made specifically for broadcast television. Sure, there are still great cartoons today, but they're scattered across dozens of streaming platforms and cable channels. There's no central Saturday morning experience that brings kids together. And maybe most importantly, we lost a tradition that brought families together. Even if parents weren't watching the cartoons, they were part of the ritual. Making breakfast, doing weekend chores while the kids were entertained, all of it created those slow, easy weekend family moments. Today's kids will never know the pure joy of waking up on a Saturday morning with absolutely nothing to do except watch cartoons for 4 straight hours. They'll never experience that perfect combination of freedom, sugar, and animated entertainment that defined our childhoods. The death of Saturday morning cartoons wasn't caused by a single villain. It was the result of government regulation, corporate greed, technological change, and shifting family dynamics, all happening at once. But here's what's truly tragic. We didn't just lose a programming block. We lost a piece of childhood itself. We lost a shared cultural experience that connected generations of kids. Sure, children today have more entertainment options than we ever dreamed of. They can watch any cartoon, anytime, anywhere. But they'll never have what we had. That magical Saturday morning ritual that made childhood feel so special. So when you find yourself nostalgic for Saturday morning cartoons, remember, you're not just missing the shows. You're missing a time when life was simpler, families moved slower, and the highlight of the week was waking up early to watch cartoons in your pajamas. Those days are gone forever. But at least, we were lucky enough to live them. If this brought back some of your own Saturday morning memories, please subscribe to the channel and check out the videos on your screen. There's so much more nostalgia to explore together.